For a handheld that sold well over 80 million units, it strangely feels like Sony's PlayStation Portable still doesn't quite get the respect it deserves. From what it could do for mid-2000s tech way before anyone else, to the fact you could watch Godzilla on it, the PSP wasn't just a step up for handheld gaming, it was a leap, the likes of which we'll never see again. And it also had the games to match. While trying to limit the entries per franchise, here are the 50 best PSP games of all time. Twisted Metal Head-On brought the beloved vehicular carnage of the PS1 classic straight to the PSP with surprisingly little compromise. It's loud, dumb, and full of that early 2000s energy that depressed Zoomers are trying to bring back. It feels like a return to the tone and chaos of Twisted Metal 2, brushing off the lukewarm weirdness of 3 and 4, which it kinda just ignores. Yes, it might not be the deepest experience ever, but few things are more satisfying than launching a flaming missile at your friend's ice cream truck mid-jump while you're on the bus. Pure chaotic fun with zero shame. If nothing else, it proved that car combat could work in the palm of your hand. Shame car combat just doesn't seem to work anywhere these days. The genre really has ghosted. Capcom decided to bring the most soul-crushing platformer of all time to handhelds and somehow made it even more mean-spirited. Like, genuinely, this may be the hardest one of all. Basically a remix of the first 3 games, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins keeps the classic run, jump, die, repeat gameplay loop intact with new 2.5D visual polish and just enough tweaks to trick you into thinking it's more fair. It's not. It's still the kind of game where one missed jump can ruin your day. If you're the kind of bloke who thinks Elden Ring should have an expert mode, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins is here to humble you pretty quickly. Fair warning, your head will explode before you see the end credits, but you'll respect the hell out of it just before your eyes fly out the window. The PSP version of everyone's favourite new metal Star Wars game doesn't just parrot the console experience, it adds extra levels and content that makes it feel surprisingly worthwhile. Some may even say it's the definitive version. Sure, the visuals are a step down and the controls can be a bit fumbly, but chucking stormtroopers around the gaff is satisfying in any resolution. And really, while it is pared down, The Force Unleashed on PSP is a very impressive version. The Force Unleashed isn't a game you play for depth, it's a power fantasy with a lightsaber and a chip on its shoulder, and I love my chippy chips. Bring Star Killer back into the canon, Disney, you cowards. Tales of Eternia isn't just one of the PSP's early JRPG highlights, it's also just a really fun JRPG to while away a couple dozen hours with. Originally a PS1 title, this handheld version brings the full experience with double the frame rate and, obvious support for a wider screen. The real-time linear motion battle system still feels sharp, letting you chain attacks and juggle enemies with satisfying fluidity. The story isn't groundbreaking, but it's carried by its small cast that will really grow on you. The 2D art has aged beautifully in the same way that something like Breath of Fire 4 has, and the soundtrack hits all the right nostalgic notes. If you fancy a solid pick up and play JRPG on PSP, you can't go wrong here. If you wanted MMO energy on the PSP without actually needing the internet or to sacrifice the outdoors, Phantasy Star Portable was ready to be your weird sci-fi loot grind of choice. It's janky, true, and a bit uneven in spots, but the real fun comes from dressing up a custom character and going dungeon diving with oversized weapons and floaty combos. The story is a bit on the light side, but the co-op was solid and the loop addictive enough to keep players hacking away for hours. It's not exactly essential today, but for its moment in time, it filled a very specific niche. Handheld monster bashing in space pajamas. And honestly, that niche still kind of rules. Join the club if you haven't yet. Rockstar's Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition hit the PSP like nitrous on asphalt or like me on the wall in F-Zero. This was the full experience crammed into your hands, minus only a few minor visual cutbacks. Blisteringly fast, surprisingly customizable, and dripping with that mid-2000s car mod culture, this game gave Need for Speed a serious run for its money. Handling is a bit twitchy, the AI can be cruel, and there's a learning curve steeper than that forgotten Ubisoft snowboarding game. But once it clicks, fun as hell. Few things felt cooler at the time than cruising past a rival with your custom paint job gleaming under the moonlight while Queens of the Stone Age blared out. This was a full-fat open-world street racer on a screen that fit in your pocket, and it's still pretty fire. Do you remember that period when EA tried to make God of War but more Catholic? And they also made a movie? Dante's Inferno was a trip. The PSP version, against all logic, actually holds up remarkably well. It replicates most of the console game's wild, grotesque descent into hell with only a few compromises, and still feels satisfyingly chunky. The combat is meaty, the imagery is bonkers, and it never shies away from being, well, completely unhinged in the best ways. God may not have wanted this game, but I sure did. EA released a remaster for like 20 or 25 quid, and my life is yours. Often lumped in with the Monster Hunter clones of its time, God's Eater Burst does deserve a bit more credit. It took the co-op monster slaying formula and injected it with some anime flair, sci-fi style, and a much faster pace. The story isn't anything you haven't seen in a shonen before, you know, ragtag outcasts, tragic paths, massive weapons, but it's well told and the characters are likeable enough. Where it shines is in how it respects your time. You can get in, bash a mutant god thing to death with a transforming sword cannon, hell yeah, and be back out before your train ride ends. It's slick and weirdly stylish, and it's weird we haven't seen one of these games this decade. If you were one of those people who memorised Thug 2 front to back and still thought, man, I wish I could take this to school, bam, the PSP delivered. Remix isn't just a shrunken down version of the console game. No, it adds 4 brand new levels and handles surprisingly well. There's a bit of jank here and there, and the loading times are a tad hefty, but once you're on the board, the good times start rolling. Eh, skateboarding? Rolling? Yes. Especially when you get to play with 3 friends. The gameplay remains as strong as ever. You'll be stringing together ridiculous combos, finding dumb secret areas, and unlocking characters that should probably be in jail. It's peak Tony Hawk nonsense in the best way possible. The game that changed the Legend of Heroes IP forever, Falcom dropped an absolute masterclass in world building here, right down to the most basic of NPCs. The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky is slower paced, sure, but that's the charm. Its characters, politics and lore all simmer nicely until you're fully invested. The combat system is more flexible than you think too, with the action time bar and craft points both allowing you to get tactical without ever feeling obtuse or clunky. It might not be for everyone, but if it is, it'll be one of those games where you finish it and immediately want the sequels. Both of those are worth playing too, by the way, but I'm not sure if the third has a fan translation out there for PSP. Maybe check it out on Steam instead. It's easy to assume a handheld Dragon Ball game might just be button-mashing fluff, but Shin Budokai 2, aka Another Road, not Another Road, actually has something to it. Building on the solid foundation of the first Shin Budokai, this sequel tightens the combat, speeds up the flow, and adds a what-if storyline that's more creative than you might think. Yes, it's still mostly a rehash of the Buu saga with some extra fanfic seasoning, but the fights are fast, responsive, and surprisingly strategic for something with such small buttons. The cel-shaded visuals hold up nicely, and you've got enough characters to keep matches feeling fresh. It might not be the deepest DBZ game, but it hits the sweet spot for handheld battles, being tight, punchy, and perfect for when you've got 5 minutes to unleash vengeance for your male pattern boldness. Widow's peak, indeed. Pursuit Force might just be the most Bollywood-arse PSP game ever made. A completely off-its-face arcade shooter with some of the most ludicrous stunts on the PSP, this game is pure adrenaline. You're leaping onto speeding trucks, blasting gang members in mid-air, and somehow surviving collisions that would kill most Marvel heroes. The difficulty is brutal, so much so that they had to tone it down for the sequel, but there is a rewarding rhythm once you master its chaos. Bonus points for the cheesy voice acting and the absurd narrative, which makes it feel like a lost Saturday morning cartoon made for grown-ups. Something like Pursuit Force would probably be a mobile game these days, and while it doesn't have a lot of depth, it still absolutely deserves to be hunted down. Tomb Raider Anniversary takes Lara Croft's original 1996 adventure and reimagines it with the slick mechanics of Legend, giving us a nostalgia trip that actually plays pretty well. Somehow, the PSP version manages to hang on to the tight controls and sprawling level design without falling apart technically. It's a bit heavy on loading screens, and yeah, some of the acrobatics can be fussy sometimes on a tiny analog nubbin, but once you find the rhythm, it's a rewarding old-school action platformer. The puzzles are satisfying, the visuals are solid, and the atmosphere still hits. Anniversary might not hit quite as hard on handheld as it did on console, but it's a much better conversion to PSP than Legend was before it. When it comes to Anniversary, you really can have your cake and eat it too. This one gets forgotten too often and absolutely wouldn't get made today with that name, but Fat Princess Fistful of Cake brought one of the PS3's most chaotic multiplayer ideas over to handheld in a surprisingly effective way. A weird old blend of capture the flag and real-time strategy, it's all about storming enemy castles, rescuing your team's princess, and force-feeding the enemies so she's harder to carry. The PSP version includes more maps and modes than the original, and while obviously lacks a proper online player base now, the AI skirmishes can still provide plenty of fun. But just don't try to take it too seriously, it's called Fat Princess. Nobody ever took Fat Princess to Evo. Maybe they should. While the visuals take a bit of a hit, obviously, and the screen can get a bit too chaotic in tight spots, the sheer amount of content packed into Marvel Ultimate Alliance's UMD is pretty impressive. You got tons of playable Marvel characters, a surprisingly deep upgrade system, and enough story beats to keep comic fans happy. The controls are snappy, the co-op can be a blast, and unlocking characters generally felt amazing in a time before you'd open your underwear drawer and oops, there's Spider-Man. It's Diablo Light in spandex, and for a superhero fix on the go, it still punches way above its weight. You can even unlock characters like Black Widow and Captain Marvel exclusively on PSP, or you can just hammer in the cheat code on the start menu. Up, up, down, down, left, 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 start. You are welcome. With buttery smooth handling and some of the best arcade racing physics you'll find on any platform, this is pure serotonin. How Sumo managed to capture that much speed, polish and sunshine on a handheld remains like magic. The drifting feels glorious, the colour palette is lovely, and the soundtrack, yeah, still a whipper. It even includes a near complete port of Outrun 2 SP, making it one of the most stacked racers on the handheld. It might lack the punch of the PS2 or Xbox versions, but it more than holds its own on a small screen. A must play for arcade racing fans and one of the PSP's very best zone out while you watch Cultured Vultures on the big TV kinda games. Before Call of Duty turned the whole FPS genre into an arms race to collaborate with the next South Korean hit on Netflix, Medal of Honor Heroes tried its best to make the PSP a viable shooter platform. And you know what? It did a pretty good job. The campaign's a typical World War II affair with missions where you play as previous Medal of Honor, heroes, but it's the multiplayer that really helped it stand out back in the day. Up to 32 players in wireless death matches was absurdly ambitious for the time, and it actually worked. The controls are a bit stiff and weird now, like you the first time you watched American Pie, but for its moment, it felt like you were sneaking a PS2 shooter into your pocket. Respectable, if a little janky, but janky in that lovable way that'll kind of change your teenage years. A third-person shooter spin-off from the PS3's alternate history Alien FPS series sounds like a risky pivot, but Retribution pulled it off. Developed by Bend Studio, they of Siphon Filter and Days Gone fame, this one ditches the excess of the mainline games for a more grounded but still alien-heavy European war vibe. The controls are tailored smartly for handheld play, and there's a great mix of weapons, including a sniper rifle that still feels incredible to use. Bonus points go to the Infected mode unlocked via PSP and PS3 connection, which adds new story bits and some gameplay tweaks. A proper little sci-fi war story that you can also play on your PS4 and 5 these days. I don't know, something about it on PSP just hits different. If you've never dipped your toes into the East series, this is a great place to start. A remake of the third game, Oath in Felghana ditches the side-scrolling awkwardness of the original and replaces it with silky smooth isometric action and tight combat that just feels pretty damn good. You play as Ardol as always, but the pace here is more aggressive than most action RPGs. No waiting around, no turn-based stuff, just quick attacks, dodges, and getting shit done. The bosses hit like trucks, and the music slaps harder than it has any right to. You could argue it's a bit old school in tone, but it's so lean and refined that it doesn't matter. One of the best pure action RPGs on PSP, and there's no question about that. It took its sweet time, but Gran Turismo finally showed up on the PSP in 2009, and it mostly delivered. Mostly. While it lacks a proper career mode, this isn't just a stripped down port of Gran Turismo 4. The physics, visuals and car list are all pure GT and crammed onto a UMD like it's no big deal. There are tons of vehicles, decent AI and the ability to run races at a smooth frame rate with real weight to each turn. Sure, it does lack some soul without that traditional progression loop, but as a pocket-sized driving sim, it is seriously impressive. This is still one of the best technical showcases on PSP, even if it feels more like a museum for Gran Turismo at large than the full experience. This one doesn't get enough credit really. Soul Calibur Broken Destiny might have launched without a proper story mode, but what it did bring was a pretty dang good Soul Calibur in your pocket. For PSP standards, the visuals are ridiculous, with characters that pop and fights that feel like they're happening on a console. Oh, and it has Kratos from God of War, which every good video game has. See what I mean? Yes, it leans on arcade and versus modes a bit too much, but the sheer mechanical tightness makes it one of the slickest fighters on the system that's just fun to dip in and out of. You can also check this one out on PS4 and PS5, but just like Retribution, it does lose some of its charm off of the PSP. Bravo for this one, Bandai. SOCOM's brand of tactical shooting might feel a little, search a soul, you know it to be true, clunky now, but Fireteam Bravo 2 was the real deal on PSP. Instead of pretending to be a handheld Call of Duty, it doubled down on slow, methodical team-based missions that required some actual thought. The campaign spans across a fictional Central Asian conflict zone and lets you issue orders, flank enemies, and keep camo makers in business. The real kicker though, online play was great while it lasted, with proper voice chat support if you had the headset. You could even unlock special content if you had one of the PS2 games. Like a lot of shooters, the controls do take a bit of getting used to on PSP, but if you locked in, there was real tactical joy to be had. Sony, for the last time, if you want to get on the live service train, look at SOCOM, please. Crush is the kind of puzzle game you show people just to watch their brain melt. It's all about switching between 2D and 3D perspectives to crush the environment and solve environmental puzzles, and somehow it works, as long as your brain liquid stays in its bone cage. It teaches you to think laterally, with mechanics that feel like they belong on a whiteboard at some game design think tank. Tonally, it's kinda bleak, dealing with the guy's mental health struggles, but that gives it an endearing, pretty relatable edge. It never got the spotlight it deserved, but it's one of the cleverest games on the PlayStation Portable. Not for everyone, but if it clicks, you'll spend hours twisting your brain around it like origami. Oh yeah, what a banger. Liberation didn't even try to replicate the mainline Killzone formula. Instead, it swerved into isometric shooter territory and ended up with one of the best designed games on PSP. It's slick, responsive, and genuinely pretty satisfying to control, with you even able to boss allies about. It's also pretty tough, and you're going to be playing it a bunch to get those challenges and get some upgrades. The story is forgettable, sure, but yeah, that's never been Killzone's strongest suit. What stands out is the punchy haptic gunplay and just how well it handles with a single analog nub. The sickos among us, meaning me, kinda even preferred Liberation to the original game. I'd kill for any kind of new Killzone game these days, or even just a remaster, a port, a tweet. This here is how you do a pretty good remake. Lunar Silver Star Harmony takes the beloved Sega CD classic and polishes it into one of the most charming RPGs on the PSP. The new hand-drawn visuals are bloody lovely, the music's been redone beautifully, and the slightly tweaked script hits that sweet spot between earnest and goofy. At its core, this is still the same simple enough tale of a young hero's journey to become a Dragon Master, but it's still a timeless RPG that's never been ported from the handheld. It won't blow your mind with the mechanics, and it's a tad on the easy side, but Lunar Silver Star Harmony nails the vibe of a comfort game to chip away at while you shut off on your couch for a few or 20 hours. Lovely packaged and crammed with bonuses, the largely forgotten Dracula X Chronicles takes the pretty beloved Rondo of Blood and gives it a fresh coat of paint, while also sneaking in full unlockable versions of both the original Rondo and Symphony of the Night. That's 3 Castlevanias for the price of 1, and they're all bangers. The 2.5D visuals in the remake are divisive, sure, but they hold a certain charm, and the tight classic gameplay still shines through. Even if the difficulty spikes are a bit brutal, it's hard to argue with the sheer value on offer here. If you want to whip crack through gothic nightmares for the first or 30th time, Castlevania The Dracula X Chronicles is one of the PSP's best legacy collections that's sneaky about being one too. Metal Gear Acid 2 is the Metal Gear game that needs more love. It's not your usual stealth action romp, but a turn-based tactical card game instead. Sounds like an odd shift, but it works surprisingly well, and is a much better game than the original Acid. Story keeps things in line with Metal Gear's brilliant brand of conspiracy-laden bollocks with a pretty wild twist. I'm surprised it never gets much airtime. It's really out there. Visually, the cel-shaded art style adds a nice comic book flair, making it look unlike much else on the system. Yes, the card system is definitely an acquired taste, but for those who are up for something a bit different with surprising depth, Acid 2 is a PSP game that matters. Crash and Clank Size Matters shrinks down the galaxy-hopping chaos of the PS2 series into something that hits so hard while your parents are arguing loudly after dinner. While it's of course a bit scaled down visually and in scope, the core formula remains unchanged. Wild weapons, whiplash platforming, and the kind of slapstick humour that keeps things light. No seriousness please, I am shooting robots with bees. The controls translate well, and the level design, while a little boxy, does the job. For a game developed outside of Insomniac, Size Matters captures the tone of the series pretty nicely. It's not essential, but if you were stuck on a long train ride in 2007, it wouldn't have been a bad way to burn out your battery. A tight remix of the best bits of Burnout 2 and 3, Legends will still put hair on your chest and toes. Tracks are punchy, takedowns are satisfying, and Crash Mode remains one of the best dumb fun minigames in racing history. Please bring it back. It's pretty surprising how much of the Burnout magic translated to the PSP without major compromise, though everything is obviously a bit more square. In terms of sheer velocity and raw explosive fun though, this is one of the handheld's sharpest racers. And hey, without getting into handheld, war business, which version of the game lets you bump some yellow card as you bump cars off the road? Because it ain't the DS version. It ain't the DS version. Here's a cult classic lovingly dug up and given new bones, and everyone knows that bones equals money. While not quite the full-scale remake we'd get later on PS4, Resurrection still brings the charmingly macabre medieval back to life with a lot of that offbeat style. Sir Daniel Fortescue stumbles his way through creepy crypts and haunted woods with the kind of gangly gallows humour that helped make a lot of kids a bit weird back on the PS1. The visuals are nicely updated, the voice acting gets a big boost thanks in part to Tom Baker, and it has just enough tweaks to gameplay to feel fresh. It's not the smoothest experience around these days, but there's so much personality here that it doesn't really matter. Oof, I'm going to give myself an aneurysm here while trying to not reference The Thing. You know, The Thing. The Ridge Racer series used to act as the blueprint for how to launch a console, and the PSP version genuinely was mind-blowing in 2004. It's a greatest hits mix of tracks from across the franchise, with slick visuals, buttery smooth drift mechanics, and a trance soundtrack that slaps harder than expected. Handling feels great once you get in the groove, and it's still one of the most instantly enjoyable racing experiences on any handheld. You can keep your realism. I'm going to drive Pac-Man in his car plane in 60 FPS while I take a dump. Tetris may be the king of shapes, but Lumines is the stylish glow-stick waving prince of the puzzle genre. Created by Tetsuya Mizuguchi of Rez and Space Channel 5 fame, Lumines fuses block-dropping gameplay with pulsing electronic music, syncing the visuals and audio into something hypnotic and kinda transcendent, kinda. It's the kind of game you zone into for just 10 minutes and emerge from an hour later questioning reality. The PSP screen was practically made for this kind of thing, as you can dip in and out of it easily while only slightly melting your brain. As puzzle games go, Lumines is cool without even trying, and is easily one of the most replayable games on the PlayStation Portable. Tekken Dark Resurrection is one of the cleanest ports to ever land on a handheld. For a time, this was honestly my favourite Tekken game. Else, right, that Sergei was peak. Somehow Namco pulled off a near flawless version of their arcade fighter, complete with most of the bells and whistles you'd want, but also serves as an update to Tekken 5 too. Fluid combat, a deep roster, and the same pick up and play sensibility that made Tekken so dominant on the PS1 and PS2 can be enjoyed here. For fighting game fans, this was the PSP's litmus test. If you could master it on this tiny D-pad, you could probably do Evo Moment 38. Probably. Giving the spotlight to Jack's wisecracking, sometimes a bit annoying sidekick might have felt like a strange idea at the time, but Ready at Dawn made it work really well on PSP. Daxter is a slick 3D platformer with fluid controls, smart level design, and just enough of that Jack and Daxter charm to keep fans engaged. It manages to walk the line between being an actual prequel and a standalone outing, showing us what Daxter was up to while Jack was off being tortured. Not the best holiday, that one. Still prefer it to Magaluf though. Bonus points for the bug zapping gameplay, dream sequences parodying movies, and some of the cleanest visuals on the PSP. It's funny, polished, and way better than anyone expected. Siphon Filter's gritty stealth action antics made a superb transition to the PSP with Dark Mirror, which feels like a proper evolution of the PS1 originals rather than a weird experiment. Coughing sounds. Gabe Logan sneaks, rolls, and hell yeah, tases his way through a tightly designed single-player campaign that still holds up well today. The mechanics are solid, the gadgets are fun, and the level design keeps things tense without ever getting too punishing. Add in a robust multiplayer mode that people actually played, and you've got one of these system's most well-rounded shooters. It was a confident return for Siphon Filter. So of course we got one more Siphon Filter game and then the series died. Still think that's a pretty stupid decision. Nailed it. Decidia Duodecim is the PSP's ultimate Final Fantasy fever dream. It's a fighting game, an RPG, a fanfic basically, and a stress test for your thumbs all rolled into one. With an expanded roster including Tifa, Kain, Lightning, and Laguna, hell yeah Laguna, and improved systems over the first game, it's a genuinely deep and weirdly addictive arena brawler where you control a giant world map and get a story shouted at you. The Brave/HP system still stands out as a clever risk-reward mechanic, it looks and sounds incredible, and there's an almost absurd amount of unlockables, including the OG Decidia. If you absolutely love chaos yelling about balance, this is pretty much your perfect Final Fantasy game. This enhanced port of the original Disgaea Hour of Darkness brings its absurd tactical RPG grindfest to the PSP with all the bells, whistles, and sardonic edge intact. With its infinite leveling, world and side items, and characters that range from smug demons to exploding penguins, it's nothing if not maximalist, or extra if your brain is porridge. But it's also tight, rewarding, and deeply strategic if you want it to be. Add in the Etna mode, bonus story, extra boss battles, and ad hoc multiplayer, plus the ability to quick save your battles mid-grind, and you can say goodbye to quite a few afternoons with this one. Following up the critically beloved PS3 original was no small task, but Sega pulled it off with Valkyria Chronicles 2. The tactical gameplay is sharp, blending turn-based positioning with third-person shooting in a way that still feels really fresh and pretty damn unique. While the move to PSP brings smaller maps and a more anime-inspired score setting, the combat loop remains satisfying and the sheer amount of content is kinda staggering really. Class systems, custom squads, branching missions, there's loads going on here, and it's a total marvel on the PSP. It might not have the same grandeur as the console original game, but it's a portable tactics powerhouse and one of the PSP's most robust games in general. Right, let's get dark. Level 5 really said, what if we made a Fire Emblem game but let you turn into magical armoured demigods? And the 8 people who played this in 2007 when it came to the West all said, hell yeah. This tactical RPG, loosely based on the real-life Joan of Arc, emphasis on loosely, blends nice grid-based combat with vivid anime cutscenes, surprisingly touching character arcs, and a strong narrative core. It's accessible without being dumbed down, offering enough strategic depth to keep genre veterans engaged without overwhelming newcomers at the same time. Plus, it's visually gorgeous for the system, bright, clean art direction, and great UI. For a one-off title that never got a sequel, this still holds up as one of the PSP's finest ever gems. It's not hidden anymore after all. It's pure brilliance. Sony Liverpool brought its signature anti-grav racing chaos to the PSP with Wipeout Pure, and the result still feels kind of miraculous. Sleek visuals? Check. Pulse-pounding electronic soundtrack? Check. Speed so fast you might forget Street Sharks exist? Absolutely. Pure strips things back compared to some later entries, and that actually works in its favour. This is Wipeout at its cleanest, tightest, and purest. It also set the bar early for what the PSP could do graphically and came stacked with downloadable content long before that was the norm. I mean, that's not necessarily a great thing in and of itself, but Wipeout did it. It did do it. Now get someone to make a new one, Sony. You could even do it as a live service thingy. Wipeout deserves its freedom. Freedom Unite took everything great about Monster Hunter Freedom 2 and made it even more massive. Somehow. More monsters, more quests, more gear, more ways to get bodied by a wyvern because you brought the wrong weapon. Great fun. While the controls can be a learning curve, especially the infamous claw grip, this was the game that turned many casual players into dedicated hunters. The sheer depth here is almost terrifying. Hundreds of hours worth of gear grinds, strategy tweaks, and boss fights that test your patience as much as your reflexes, and it's perfect to do on the PSP. It's one of the PSP's best-selling games for a reason, so unite or die trying, or sit on the toilet for a few more hours until you beat those two Rajangs. Don't have a crisis, you'll get them eventually. Prequels can be tricky, but Crisis Core sticks the landing by making you genuinely care about a character you knew from the start was, not gonna have a great time. Zack Fair's story adds weight and heart to the broader Final Fantasy VII universe with real-time combat that feels fresh and plenty engaging. The slot machine system is weird, sure, but there's a rhythm to it that grows on you. And when the emotional gut punches hit, they hit hard. Crisis Core is gorgeous, bold, and has one of the most memorable endings on the PSP, or across the whole of Final Fantasy. For Final Fantasy fans, Crisis Core wasn't just fan service, it was essential, and probably one of the best prequels ever made. Right here is joy in video game form. Loco Roco 2 doubles down on everything that made the original a delight, with bouncy levels, more catchy music, and even more ways to split and merge your gooey blob friends. It's all controlled with just a couple of buttons, yet it feels so tactile and so alive. It's got this colourful off-kilter aesthetic that feels part dream, part fevered crayon experiment, and the soundtrack? Nonsense words sung with heart. It's like Bjork, right? But less weird. Behind all the whimsy is clever level design and a game that never stops introducing new mechanics. Pure serotonin and a love letter to how weird and creative the PSP could be. Don't sleep on it. Set a decade before the original game, Birth by Sleep follows three characters, each with their own campaign and gameplay style. Terra's Path explores his struggle with darkness, Ventus grapples with his fractured identity, and Aqua serves as the group's emotional anchor. The finale remains one of the most powerful moments in the franchise and, well, across gaming. As far as the gameplay itself goes, it does play beautifully, introducing the command deck system, shot locks, and one of the fastest, most satisfying combat loops across the whole series. Backed by some amazing visuals for the handheld, Birth by Sleep laid the groundwork for a lot of future Kingdom Hearts madness, and in many ways still outclasses some of the entries that followed. Put it upon your PSP if you somehow haven't yet. Yeah, there's nothing else quite like Patapon. Equal parts rhythm game, strategy title, and masculine high, Patapon puts you in the role of a god beating a war drum who's commanding a tribe of eyeball creatures in time with your button presses. That sentence alone should tell you just how joyfully bizarre this whole thing is. But beneath the quirk is surprising depth. Learning the rhythms, unlocking new units, and pushing your little army further with every beat is incredibly rewarding and surprisingly intense. With its stark visuals and iconic chants, the game, along with its also great sequel, sticks in your head in all the right ways. It's stylish and experimental, proving that sometimes the weirdest ideas are the most genius, like making an RPG into a social sim set in a school. Streamlining the original PS2 game while introducing a fully playable female protagonist path, Persona 3 Portable isn't just a port, it's a full rethink. You're still juggling school life, friendships, dungeon crawling, and moon-fueled doom, but now you can do it on the bus. The Persona fusion system is still addictive as all hell, the music slaps harder than it has any right to, and the mood is pure stylish melancholy. It's a game about life, death, and shooting yourself in the head with a metaphorical gun. What's not to love? True, turning most of the storytelling into quite flat visual novel stuff isn't the best for everyone, and it might feel a bit quaint next to Reload these days, but Persona 3 Portable still lets you mash two crabs together to make a beautiful woman, and that's gaming, baby. Hot take time, Vice City Stories is a more fun game to pick up and play than Vice City. Building on the neon-soaked nostalgia of Vice City and also the grim grime of Liberty City Stories, this PSP entry adds new gameplay features including actual Empire mechanics, a more refined shooting system, and a surprisingly heartfelt story about family and betrayal. Playing as Victor Vance, who's the brother of Vice City's Lance Vance, the game fleshes out a world fans already loved and gives it more weight and dashes of pink. The empire building mechanic adds a light management layer, multiplayer was a ton of rudimentary fun, and the radio stations, hell yeah, still absolute bangers. It's a miracle how much they squeezed into a PSP UMD here. Also, Phil Collins. You'd think cramming God of War onto a handheld would result in a heavily compromised game. Nope, Ghost of Sparta is just as brutal, just as cinematic, and arguably more focused, sometimes in some ways, than its console counterparts, and a step up from the also brilliant Chains of Olympus. Kratos' blood-soaked sojourn sees him dealing with family trauma. What? Kratos? No, it can't be. And punching mythological beasts right in the teeth. And it all looks incredible for PSP. Seriously, this is one of the best looking games on the system, and still looks pretty great today. Combat is fluid, the pacing is tight, and there's almost no filler here. Kratos can fill her in though, if you know what I mean, and her friends. Ghost of Sparta proves that handheld action didn't have to be lesser. Just take a few polygons off the boobies and the sky's the limit. You dirty dog. Diamond Dog. Peace Walker isn't just one of the best PSP games, it's also one of the best Metal Gear games, full stop. A tactical espionage action game that balances base building, bite-sized missions, visual novel romance, and deeply weird Kojima storytelling, Peace Walker somehow fits an entire Metal Gear saga into a portable format without breaking a sweat. Well, it does chug along a little bit, but still, they push the handheld basically beyond its limits here. As the freshly jaded big boss, you'll sneak, recruit soldiers, research weapons, and fight a tank controlled by an AI voiced by your ex-boss / mentor / mother figure who had a ghost lover. It's as brilliant as it is bonkers. The co-op mode was ahead of its time, and the game laid the groundwork for MGS5 years before it launched. A true portable marvel, and just an all-round banger. But the best PSP game of all time has to be the PSP's crown jewel. Final Fantasy Tactics: The War of the Lines isn't just a port of the PS1 classic, no, it's the definitive version. It improves the localization, adds gorgeous animated cutscenes, introduces new classes and characters, and smooths out a few long-standing issues. At its heart though, The War of the Lines is still the same intricate, ruthless tactical RPG masterpiece. Ramza's morally grey tale of nobility, betrayal, and war remains one of the best Final Fantasy stories ever told. Everything matters here, and the art? Timeless, with Akihiko Yoshida's character designs lending a distinct, haunting atmosphere. This would still look sensational if it came out as an indie today. For strategy fans, this isn't just the best PSP game, it might be the best tactics game ever made. A legendary game perfectly preserved. For God's sake, Square.